Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me enormous pleasure to introduce the Assistant Treasurer and Minister for Housing, the Honourable Michael Sukkar.
Well, Stuart, look, thank you so much for that really kind introduction. It's wonderful to be able to join you at this Industry Leaders Forum. The last time I was at this event was a couple of years ago in person with a huge group of your members, and it's wonderful that we can do this in lieu of a formal get together, and I hope it's not too long into the future that we're able to all meet together again. Can I also thank, in addition to yourself, Stuart, and your team, including Lesley, Yates, Mark Pedder, your chairman. Thank you, Mark, for your words of introduction this morning and the outstanding work that you do behind the scenes with AAAA. And of course, can I also extend some words to Craig Ondarchi, the state member for the Northern Metro region, a great mate of mine, a great champion of your industry, and someone who over the last few years has been very dogged in his advocacy for your industry, for mandatory information sharing and your industry in general. So Craig, it's wonderful that you can be on the line as well. Stuart, again, thanks for the introduction. We all know, and the 950 people on this call, I'm sure, know just how important the motor vehicle servicing and repair sector is. It's a $23 billion industry in Australia with 35,000 businesses that employ over 100,000 Australians. And as Stuart gave you some sense of, the Morrison government is absolutely committed to ensuring that all repairers and everybody in the industry is able to compete on a level playing field, and providing ultimately consumers with greater choice when deciding who repairs their vehicle. In our view, a genuinely competitive market for motor vehicle service and repair activities obviously relies on all repairers having access to the information they require to safely and effectively repair their customer's vehicle. I've recognised, the government's recognised, and indeed your long advocacy over many years has recognised that the current voluntary arrangements for sharing service and repair information just aren't working and haven't worked for a very long period of time, and indeed have just got worse over time. So it's our view that we design a system that's effective, fair and safe so that vehicles on our roads can be effectively maintained over their lifetime. I'm pleased to report that the government's now in the absolute, and I stress absolute, final stages of the design of primary legislation for the introduction of a mandatory scheme for sharing of service and repair information as a new and discrete part of the Competition and Consumer Act. Our scheme will be the first of its kind in Australia, and indeed the first of its kind in the broader Asia Pacific region. And I can assure you many of those jurisdictions are looking closely at us. The new scheme will set out a framework for access to service and repair information, including who's got to provide the information, who's entitled to receive it, and what, if any, access conditions will apply. The scheme will, of course, have at its heart and its absolute goal to provide consumers with a greater choice of repairers, whilst reducing delays and ultimately cost for them as well. It will importantly bring our automotive repair industry into closer alignment with the existing arrangements in the United States and European Union. Schemes that we were told were not possible, as Stuart said in his opening remarks, lawyers at 100 paces telling us how it's impossible and it can't be done. Well, the work we've done to date proves that it can be done and it will be done. Our view is, and it's our intention, that the scheme's benefit will flow to independent repairers across the entire industry, and particularly benefiting communities in regional Australia. this mandatory scheme remains an absolute priority and has remained a priority even in the midst of the extraordinarily difficult circumstances we've been dealing with the pandemic this year. And it's our plan to release draft legislation for consultation in a matter of weeks. Consultation on draft legislation that will not be long-winded consultation. It'll be short, sharp and brief, because this is an issue, as has been alluded to, has been discussed for over 10 years, but will be released for final consultation in a matter of weeks, and we will seek to progress it immediately thereafter. Stuart also in his opening remarks spoke about a new industry-led organisation which will assist with the new mandatory information scheme and the inevitable transition that the entire industry will need to take. Well, in that respect, I'm very pleased to announce today that the government has approved and will provide a one-off $250,000 grant to this organisation to help it develop the online resources required to provide access to and information about the motor vehicle service and repair information changes. This funding may be used for establishing an online portal to facilitate access to information by repairers, along with any other activities. And I really do look forward to this organisation, of which the AAAA is an important cornerstone member, being finally established in coming months so it can receive this funding and put it to good use. I want to thank, in particular, Stuart and his team at the AAAA for the work that they've done with this new industry-led body. It will play an extraordinarily important part of the scheme. It has not been without its challenges, as has been alluded to. It's not been without some difficult conversations along the way, but I'm very confident for all of the people on this call and organisations and businesses on this call today that this new industry-led body will help steward each and every one of you through the inevitable adjustment into a new world of mandatory data sharing. And we hope that that small amount of funding will assist that organisation in providing you with easy access to all of the information that you need. So in summary, in relation to data sharing, I know it's been a long time coming. It was 2 years ago at this event in person when I first announced the government and my intention to progress a mandatory data sharing scheme. I know 2 years is a long time, and I know in the private sector and in agile businesses like all of yours, 2 years is an eternity. In government, 2 years is a slightly shorter period of time, given the way bureaucracies work. But we pushed as hard as we possibly can, and even in the midst of a pandemic, when there were many voices, not from within the government, but many voices certainly who aren't keen to see mandatory data sharing, who were encouraging the government to focus on other things and to focus more on pandemic-related issues, that mandatory data sharing could have been put on the back burner yet again, but we have absolutely chosen not to do that. And that's why we'll have, as I said, draft legislation for consultation in a matter of weeks and a mandatory scheme as shortly thereafter as possible. And of course, an industry-led body, which you will all have a stake in. Every single organisation on this call will have a figurative seat at that table, because Stuart and his team at the AAAA will have a seat at that table of that industry-led body who will be entrusted with this transition. So I know that's really one of the most important aspects of today, but I also wanted to take an opportunity just to speak a bit about what the government's doing more broadly. We've obviously had a tumultuous year. The government has done everything we possibly can to try and cushion the blow for all Australians and businesses, whether it's the JobKeeper program, and I know so many in your industry who've utilised JobKeeper are now coming off JobKeeper, and that is the absolute mark of success of a scheme like this. And I know there are still many businesses who are still, particularly many in Victoria, who are still accessing JobKeeper. A phenomenally important scheme. The cash flow boost, over $30 billion, has gone to small businesses around Australia to help them stay afloat. And this budget, which we just announced a matter of weeks ago, builds on cushioning that blow to business and to society more broadly into the next phase of recovery. And for your industry, of course, the JobMaker hiring credit is one that we hope will be enthusiastically taken up, which of course provides eligible employers $200 a week if you hire somebody between the ages of 16 to 29, or $100 a week to employ somebody new between the ages of 30 to 35. We expect that this will support 450,000 Australians, and I hope that your industry avails itself of it. We've of course put in place the 50% apprentice wage subsidy, which again, we think is extraordinarily important to make sure that we don't have, as a consequence of this COVID recession, a gap in the very important supply of highly talented young people who are going to be the next generation that take on the challenges of the industry into the future. So that that 50% apprentice wage subsidy, the hiring credit, we see as vitally important to those next steps. Of course, we've put in place larger schemes, whether it's instant expensing, whether it's tax cuts for 11 million Australians. We are very confident about the future. We're very confident about where the Australian economy is going. And if any industry exhibits the resilience of the Australian economy more than yours, I don't know who it is. Small, in many cases, independent, family-run businesses, and we're very keen to do everything we can as a government to help you on the other side of the pandemic, and we hope that's the case. I think if you look at where we've come from, the RBA yesterday, for example, said that they think the Australian economy is out of recession. And if you compare what we've dealt with compared to the past, the most relevant comparison, I suspect, is looking at the GFC 10 years ago. In the global financial crisis 10 years ago, we saw global growth contract, or the global economy contract by 0.1%. This year, the OECD and the IMF collectively expect the global economy to contract by 4.5%, meaning that what we have all dealt with this year was 45 times more damaging than what we went through during the global financial crisis. 45 times more damaging. So the fact that you and your organisations and your businesses are here to tell the story at the end of this pandemic is quite remarkable. It's a testament to the resilience of your businesses and your industry. And I hope a small part is testament to the assistance and the support that the Morrison government has put in place to see your businesses through this. And I think coming out of 2020, and let's be frank, I think most of us want to put 2020 behind us. We can say if we're able to survive that, we can almost survive anything. We have got your back. We've put in place a range of measures to make sure that the recovery looks solid. And of course, for you particularly, mandatory data sharing will no longer be a fight. It will no longer be a discussion. It will no longer be this constant arm wrestle with the car industry. It will be a reality in 2021, which, in addition to all of the other things that we should be positive about, I think give your industry great cause for optimism next year. And I'm just greatly honoured to have got to know so many of you over the last couple of years, and I'm really looking forward to making data sharing work and to see you all flourish. And most importantly, to see your customers happy. I always tell this story. Poor old Stuart, Charity and Lesley Yates and all the team have heard this far too much. But when Stuart says, I always understood this issue of mandatory data sharing, it was really based on my own experience of having the same mechanic, my family mechanic, for about 25 years. And regardless of what car I bought, I trusted him, I knew him, and I always wanted to take my car to him as my trusted repairer. And so this is all about consumer choice. And in that case, my choice was someone that I knew and trusted. And I suspect that you all have customers that are in exactly the same boat. Regardless of the vehicle they purchase, they know you, they trust you, and they want to work with you. And that's what I think data sharing will allow in 2021. So thank you for that indulgence. I appreciate joining you this morning, and it's wonderful to be able to join you. And hopefully next time we do this, we do it in person as we did a couple of years ago. Thanks very much, everybody.